Greetings. Today I'm going to talk about why the Crusades failed. It's an academic topic. It's also a historical topic of great interest, especially for those uh, whose primary interests lie in uh, early ma- early medieval Levant, the rise of the Mamluks and the rise of the Seljuk Empire, and of course within that context, the Crusades needs to be studied. Anyway, it's my subjective opinion. I don't claim any kind of objectivity in my analysis. I can consider my point of view to be pro-Crusader, kind of a partisan view, because I have no sympathy uh, for either Islam or the Mongols or for the native Christians in the Levant. My only task is to vindicate the Crusaders, all the crusading expeditions, including the Fourth Crusade, which led to the conquest of Constantinople, but rather, a vindication as well as an analysis why the crusade. I mean, why it ultimately failed. So let's start. So, as many of you may have studied, various historians have presented a plethora of opinions about the Crusades. Some have used the term as a defensive, as a legitimate defensive operation, while historians like Stephen Runciman have unequivocally denounced it, denounced the very idea of crusading. Anyway, I'm not going into the historiography. My the I mean, it's a contentious topic full of controversies. I'll rather focus on why the Crusades failed. And this brings us to the very heart of the matter. It deals with the number of Western Europeans or Europeans from Central Europe and Southern Europe, Germans, people from northern France and Britain, Denmark, Italy, Spain. I would rather shouldn't bring the context of Spain in this context because they were fighting the Reconquista, gradual inch by inch reconquest of Spain from the savage, barbaric Arab invaders who had occupied it since 711 CE, and they changed the entire name of the peninsula to Al Andalus and gradually were erasing the Christian classical European heritage of that land, and against which Saint Eulogius and the martyrs of Cordoba rose. It was not just a religious statement; it was a mark of a spiritual defiance, a cultural defiance against Arab rule. The Arabs, it's a religious filth, spiritual filth, as well as it's a physical defilement. The very presence of Arabic in Spain, in occupied Al Andalus, was a spiritual defilement. I mean, if one reads the writings of Indiculus Luminosus of Paulus Alvarez, and the writings of Saint Eulogius of Cordoba, then one gets the idea of what they're talking about. It was not merely confined to a kind of religious martyrdom, the idea. It had cultural aspects in it. Anyway, so the number of Latin, I'm using the term Latin for settlers from Western Europe, the number of Latin settlers was very low, and not every Latin settler had come to after the initial conquest of Jerusalem and the surrounding areas. Not every settler excuse me, and not every Latin settler was combatant. They were farmers, they were merchants. And they only, according to the latest research by Ronnie Ellen Bloom regarding the Crusader settlements, they only settled in those areas which had already a Christian population, not in Islamic dominated regions of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So these settlers, they were a very vulnerable target for every marauding Islamic uh, Turkish jihadist troops who were marauding the Holy Land, even after his conquest. The Holy Land, the Outremer, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Kingdom of Antioch, the Kingdom of Tripoli, and finally the County of Edessa. Sorry, the rest were counties, only the Kingdom of Jerusalem was a kingdom anyway. So the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, the County of Antioch, and the County of Edessa were always vulnerable to random attacks and from the surrounding Muslim principalities like Mosul, Damascus, Aleppo, and also from Egypt. The threat from the Fatimids could be contained, but the threat from the Turks was uh, turning point actually, that the Crusaders failed to. They won many victories, but those victories were not sufficient to destroy the power of the Turks. Uh, During this time, there was a Volkerwanderung of these Turkoman tribes. As a result of the Seljuk conquest of Iran and their and later Anatolia after the Battle of Manzikert in 1074 CE, it had led to the establishment of the Seljuk state, the Rum Sultanate in Asia Minor, the Danishmend Sultanate, then Mosul. So these Turkish sultanates were formidable military powers. They also ruled Antioch, which the Crusaders conquered. Yagisian was killed after the conquest of Antioch and the defeat of Gerboga. Anyway, so they had a ready-made manpower, ready-made warriors. They had a great supply of warriors, which seemed to be inexhaustible. Every battle the Crusaders fought against their Islamic foes, they were outnumbered. It was only due to the strategic genius and maneuvering of the military commanders that they managed to win. For example, a tragedy. One such tragedy was the Battle of Ager Sanguinus, the Battle of the Field of Blood in 1118 CE, and the regent of Antioch, Roger of Salerno, was killed, and the entire Antiochian army decimated. It is also remarkable that many Crusader kings, many kings of Jerusalem, especially kings like Baldwin II, had been taken prisoner twice in his lifetime. First after the Battle of Haran, and later in the 1120s. So it was their position was extremely precarious, and they had very little option. And the Crusader kings were always seeking assistance, seeking succor from the West. This was one of the reasons why Baldwin II married his daughter, Melisende, to Count Fulk of Anjou. To even Count Fulk, the arrival of, influx of reinforcements from Europe failed to uh, turn the tides. And with the advent of Zengi, Nuruddin, and the later Saladin, the Crusader kingdom could defend the borders of the Crusading kingdom of Jerusalem could be defended, but it had lost the power to uh, engage in offensive operations. Reynold of Chatillon's raid was an exception, but if you look at the reign of Baldwin the Fourth, he spent his entire reign trying to protect his kingdom. Montgezard, it was a brilliant victory, no doubt. Uh, but later, with the defeat at when Saladin successfully demolished the fort of the fortress of, I mean, the fort of Saint Jacob, where the Templars were building a fortress, it was decimated, and the entire garrison killed. And Baldwin the Fourth could not fail to relieve them. Later, the treasonous alliance of Count Raymond the Fourth of Tripoli with Saladin, I mean, that was another severe, proved to be a setback diplomatically. It led to demoralization, and especially after the Battle of Cresson, where Gerard de Ridderford and the Templars and the Hospitallers, they fought with just, I guess, 150 knights and some Turcopoles against a force of 6 to 10,000 Turks, led by Kogburi, one of Saladin's commanders, inside the territory of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And it was a massacre, obviously. The master of the Templars managed to escape, but the Hospitallers were decimated. Right? And it was a severe setback, no doubt. So, from the time of Baldwin the First onwards, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was overburdened. It was an ill-defended polity, and Tripoli and Antioch proved to be liabilities rather than assets, because the kings of Jerusalem often had to rescue the kingdoms of Antioch and the counts. Uh, the duchies of Antioch and Tripoli, and even Edessa from ruin. If you look at how the county of Edessa was conquered in 1144 CE, we'll find that Jocelyn II, it was sheer carelessness. I mean, it may sound racist today, but it's entirely, I mean, one can't deny it. Hilary Belloc, in his work Crusades, the World's Debate, he gave a very unflattering account of Jocelyn II, the ruler of Edessa, with his half Oriental lineage, who was fond of sensual pleasures and fond of intrigue. He failed to calculate the dangers posed by Zengi, the Atabeg of Mosul, towards his kingdom. And when it was conquered, he couldn't do anything. After Zengi's death, he tried to reconquer it, but it was a miserable failure. No help came from Jerusalem. And it was a sad end to the kingdom. By the way, that brings us to the question of the Eastern Christians. Yes, they were victims of Muslim cruelty and jizya and all that. It's true. They suffered a lot of persecution. They're still suffering. But Does that mean that they were friendly? They proved to be friendly towards the Crusaders? I am skeptical, rather. My view, I mean, I'm a thoroughgoing skeptic. Uh, a certain section of the Armenian population of Edessa, they, they cooperated with the Turks, with the Zengids, with Nuruddin. That cannot be doubted. Some Maronites uh, collaborated with some Turkish warlord, I forgot his name, against Count Ponce of Tripoli. Was killed. So it's not that everyone, the entire Christian population was friendly. Yes, there were hostilities, but again, uh, the kingdom thrived on account of the loyalty of the native Christian population. So there was a substantial minority who favored the Arabs, but the overwhelming majority were. They served the the kingdom. I mean, in the as I mean, they remained true to to their allegiance to the kings of Jerusalem. So the weakness of the Crusaders became very apparent when Bohemond I of Taranto, and he was captured by the Danishmend Turks, and later again in 1104 CE he was defeated at the Battle of Haran. Tancred managed to consolidate later the Kingdom of Antioch, but I mean, the Kingdom of Antioch, I mean, I was recently going through perusing Christopher Tarman's work, then Thomas Asbridge. Obviously, these are secondary sources, but still, nevertheless, they're important ones. I got the notion that the Kingdom of Antioch was uh, its military power. I mean, it could never, I mean, except during the brief reign of Tancred, it, I mean, it always needed the assistance of Tripoli and the Kingdom of Jerusalem to field a substantial force. It was founded by the Normans, it's true, but we rarely get to see any display of Norman battle prowess or Norman statesmanship in regards to the Counts of Antioch. They always, I mean, even though it managed to survive, it outlived the fall of Jerusalem. It survived till, I guess, till 1286 or 84. But it was a military failure since its very beginning. With the partial exception of the brief reign of Tancred. Otherwise, it was even after the Battle of Ager Sanguinus, when Bohemond later the second, when he took control and married Alice, the daughter of King Baldwin II of Jerusalem, Bohemond was also killed by the same enemy, the Danishmend Turks. And then later came, then it was the turn of Prince Reynold of Chatillon. When he became the Prince of Antioch, he was also again taken captive. And then Bohemond III, he's also suffered a tremendous defeat at the hands of Nuruddin. So, I mean, the kingdom suffered a series of defeats. Same can be said about Tripoli. So the kingdom of Jerusalem had to show these northern polities up. to strengthen them, and divert a significant part of its resources to keep their borders intact. So it was a lot of this strain on Jerusalem's resources proved to be too much rather. So when Amalric tried to invade Egypt, his invasions were proved to be, I mean, he had to return back because Nuruddin was threatening the rest of the kingdom. So in this way, it was. They constantly had to engage in warfare, and there was never any secure border. There was also the threat of the Muslims living within the kingdom, fraternizing with their co-religionists outside, beyond the borders of Outremer. So, and of course we can't. I mean, the failure of the Second Crusade. That's and their failure to recapture Edessa and also to capture Damascus. I mean, it was the most disgraceful failure when King Conrad and King Louis of France and King Conrad, the Holy Roman Emperor, when they retreated before the walls of Antioch. That gave the Muslims the confidence that finally they this idea became firmly entrenched in their minds that the Crusaders could be driven out from this land. The Third Crusade came too late, and despite King Richard the Lionheart's valor at the Battle of Arsuf, and also later the Battle of Jaffa, the Old Kingdom had vanished altogether, and the New Kingdom's base was Cyprus. The truncated Kingdom of Jerusalem was no longer a viable political entity. And I believe there was also a question, there was also a sense of spiritual erosion of values. There was those those settlers from Western Europe. They became too much of. They went native, I guess. I mean, if we read the accounts of Usama bin Munkit, of the Emir of Shaizar, we get to know that the Templars allowed him access to pray at the temple, to pray at what they call the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the Temple Mount, which was the center of the headquarters of the Templars. I mean, Templars allowing a Muslim to pray inside Jerusalem and chastising a newly arrived European from Western Europe, and he opposed that. It all seems that the Templars had. They forgot about their primary. They forgot largely about their primary vocation, which was to protect the pilgrims and fight for the kingdom. Defend the kingdom of Jerusalem. So perhaps Gerard de Ridderford was an exception, because he never. When I read about him at the battle, regarding his decision at the Battle of Cressons, and later during the siege of Acre, when he died, he seems like a person who has that ethos of what a Templar originally ought to be. Not a person who compromises with the enemy. Not a person who believes in peaceful coexistence with a foe who delight in killing. Who believe that if they kill their so-called enemy, they would go to heaven and mingle with celestial hosts and harlots. Against such depraved beliefs, the Templars were supposed to stand as a shield, which they failed to do. So, military failure, total lack of, being constantly outnumbered, ultimately led to pave the way for the fall of Jerusalem, fall of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Don't believe that the, a moment like Hattin in 1188 could have been avoided. Guy de Lusignan did what was sensible. They had to relieve the castle where the spouse of Raymond of Tripoli was besieged. I forgot the name of the castle. But it was purely bad luck, bad circumstances, and lack of water, which led to their defeat. But again, a person like Guy de Lusignan, if you look at his, what he did, activities after Hattin, you'll realize he never lost hope. He was the one who decided to besiege Accra. And later, of course, it proved to be a very sound decision, militarily speaking, because they constantly started receiving reinforcements from Western Europe. Anyway, so I'll end today's video here. It's a very interesting topic. I also wish to learn more, especially about the military orders. That's my very a kind of an amateur assessment about the failure of why the Crusades failed after going through a few secondary sources. Thanks for watching.